Hey there, ProChurch Media community, this is Jason again. In this tutorial, let's look at how to create an update or progress meter. Basically, anytime you have a numerical value that you want to highlight or celebrate, or just give a quick shout out to. Maybe you reached a fundraising goal, maybe you donated X number of liters of blood, I don't know what it is. You have a number you want to talk about and celebrate. This is maybe an idea of a creative and dynamic way to do that. Maybe it's like a quick Instagram story or something like that. So we're going to be looking at a bunch of different things of how to pull something like this off. Basically, how to use trim paths, how to use text animators, how to use track mats, how to create a numerical count up timer, and just a bunch of other things with some light expressions. It's going to be chock full of information, but hopefully really fun and really informative to help you just create some really great update progress meters, whatever you want to call them. So let's dive right into this. Let's start with a new composition. I'll just call this update meter. I'll make it 1080 by 1920 to keep that Instagram story ratio, make it 10 seconds long. And let's start just by making a just shape in the background. And I want to give this a just fill and get rid of the stroke. I'm going to put a gradient layer style on this. So I'll go to layer styles, gradient overlay. And you can come down to your gradient overlay and select the different colors that you want. To save time, I'm just going to copy what I did earlier. So if you ever want to do that, you can just copy your previous layer style, click on your new layer style, paste it there, and you're done. So it's an easy way to cheat if you already have your gradients all set up. Okay, so now let's work on our progress bar. I'm going to put a proportional grid just so I can get an idea of spacing. And you could use a rectangle for this, animate the scale of it or whatever, but I think using a stroke with trim paths will give you more flexibility in the long run. So I'm going to set a point right here, about right there, and then just keep it consistent, go up there. If you hold shift while you're clicking, it'll constrain the proportion to the y-axis. And so I think we're good with that. Let's take off that proportional grid. I need to give this a stroke and get rid of the fill. So let's get rid of the fill, add a stroke, and then let's make it something just big and fat like 260. I think that'll work. And then set this to soft light so we get that gradient kind of bleeding through, which looks really nice. Okay. Now for the trim paths, what you want to do, let's call this bar first. Okay. Twirl that down, then go over to this add button and say trim paths. Then you want to twirl this down, and there's a couple different ways you can animate this depending on which way you want to go. It's set at 100% end, 0% start. So if I pull this down to 0, you can see what's happening. So basically, I need to set a keyframe here. Let's go to like 212. Pull this up to 100, and we have our bar animation. Now the linear animation with these linear keyframes isn't very interesting, so I'm going to function F9 to ease those keyframes, select them all, go into the graph editor, and just kind of pull on these handles a bit more, just to give it a bit more dynamism on the ins and outs. A little more visual interest. There we go, it looks a little smoother, so I like that. I think we have our animated bar. Great, so you can see how trim paths are pretty easy, and then all I have to do to change the timing is just drag it out, drag it in. It's pretty easy. All right, so let's make these kind of swirling double helix lines. If you tried to draw those by hand, it probably wouldn't be a fun task, but we're going to cheat a little bit and use the bar that we already have, as well as some shape deformers to make it work. So I'm just going to duplicate this, call it swirl. And I also already have my animation set up, so I can skip that step once we get to it. So let's go to the end here. I need to make the stroke a lot smaller. Let's try like 26. And then to add that zigzaggy kind of double helix thing, I need to go to add, then down to zigzag. And you can see it's already starting to zigzag it a little bit. If I twirl this down, I can change the size, and I just want these to go beyond the sides of that bar, like so. Maybe a little bit more. And let's try maybe like 9 ridges per segment and smooth for the corners, and I think that looks pretty good. Yeah, and you can go as much or as little as you want. And so now when we go back, you can see, hey, it worked. Looks good. One thing to note, if you happen to put this zigzag in the wrong order, like say if I put this below the trim paths, you're going to get something more like a spring, which is maybe what you want, but not for this. So just make sure that's always above the trim paths if you want it to actually animate the line on. I'm going to put both of these into the shape group, and now all I have to do to get the other side is just duplicate this come down here. Actually, before we do that, let's animate the out. So I'm going to go back to that trim paths, hit start, go to the end, pull this up to 100, and you can see it's going to animate out. And I might do, you know what, I'm going to do the exact same easing on all of these, and then I'll just space them out. So we'll just pull these in, pull that in. And right now it's not going to do anything because they're the same, but if I offset these start ones by a little bit, I should get the look that I'm going for. Yeah. That looks nice. Okay, so I think we're good to go with that. Now I can duplicate this, twirl it down, go to its transform, unlink the scale, set this to -100, and it should flip it to the other side, and there we go. Looks great. I think the only thing I would want to do is maybe just offset these just a bit, just so they're not going at exactly the same time. That looks pretty good. Maybe one more, just a frame apart or so. Yeah, it looks kind of fun. Okay. So we have our swirl, we have our bar, and I think we're looking pretty good. We also have these little dots that are going up the swirl, and so, you know, maybe we can try something with that. I think maybe that swirl's a little big now, so. What we can do for those dots is duplicate this swirl. I'll call this dots. Oops. I'm going to get rid of shape 2 real quick, and even shape 1. Okay. So for this, I don't want to actually animate the, I'm going to be using the trim paths, but I don't want to animate the start and the end. So I can just get rid of those for right now. And what I want to set this to is like end at 100 and start at like 99.99%. And then I need to, let's try that again. Let's just try 99. There, you can see it. Now we need to set the end cap of the stroke to, instead of butt cap, we need to set it to round. You can see we get the roundness going there. So now we can do 99.99, and it should be a little dot. There we go. And I'll bump up the size. And so what I want to do with this one is just animate the offset. So I'll set an offset keyframe there. See what I did over here. So that's about where I ended with the first one. So for the offset, I just need to pull it down here until it comes down to about right there. And I'll easy ease that. Do the handle drag thing. And now it should swirl up that helix. Looks great. And the last thing I might do with this is add just a quick opacity set of keyframes just so it doesn't pop into existence. So we'll set 100 there. Maybe start the opacity right there. Yeah, that looks better. We'll do the same thing at the end. Set an opacity keyframe. Maybe one frame before it ends. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, that looks nicer. So it kind of almost comes from outside of the frame, if you will, and then dissolves into the top. Looks good. Okay. So once again, all I have to do is duplicate that, come down to the transform, unlink these, -100, and now we should have these maybe offset this top one by a frame or two. Yeah, there we go. That looks great. Okay, so you can see this is pretty easy to do and pretty easy to change up once you get it going, so it's pretty fun. All right, so at the beginning we had this kind of line draw in and then the text fall down below it, so we're going to do that. So I'm going to use the same technique. Let's just go all the way over here. Again, if you hold shift while you're holding that, it'll constrain it to the x-axis. Let's make it maybe about 5 pixels wide. Soft light, let's call this bottom bar. Take off that proportional grid, see what we're doing. Actually, I guess I needed to put it right up there. Okay, that looked good. Okay, so we want to do the same trim paths, so we'll add a trim paths. But instead of animating from 0 to 100, I want to start from the center. So I want to go set one for 50 here, and 50 for this end, and then come forward a little bit, maybe to about right there, and start and go 0 and 100 as long as they go the opposite direction. It doesn't really matter. Do the same easy ease, pull this over, pull this over, a little more dynamism in the animation. Yeah, there we go. Cool. So we got the bottom bar. I can duplicate this, call it top bar. Just move, oops. Just move it up to the top, find out where it ends. And then really all I have to do is just adjust those keyframes for when it hits the top. Something like that will probably work. Yeah, that looks nice. Okay, sweet. Let's move on to our text, which is really probably the most important part of this. So you want to start just by creating a text layer, and you can put any number in here that you want. I'm just going to put 2000. And the way you set it up is kind of gonna depend on how if you need like currency symbols, or if you need decimals, or if you need commas or anything like that. If you don't, it's pretty easy to set up. What you would do is you would first of all go to Effect, and then Expression Control, Slider Control. You would then come down to your text and Alt-click on your source text. Just use the pick whip to pick whip the slider value. And now you could say, like, start here at 0, come forward to say 3000, and it's going to start animating your text. But as you can see, it doesn't look very nice. It has these weird, values going on, and you might not want decimal places. Maybe you just want whole numbers. And once you start easing it, it can get even weirder. And so it's just kind of doesn't work as is. So what you have to do is when you run into this situation, you can just Alt-click on the slider control here, come down to this little expression language menu, go to JavaScript Math, say Math Round, and that is going to round it to the nearest whole number. So you won't be able to use decimal places, but if you're just doing whole numbers, it should work pretty well for you. The other method is a bit more complex in that it's a little more expression heavy, but it is ultimately a matter of copying and pasting, so I'm going to show you how to do it, even though I'm not going to take really the time to explain everything that's going on. So if you navigate over to motionscript.com/design-guide/counter, you'll find a great resource of After Effects expressions and knowledge, especially this one, which is the Universal Counter and Currency Formatter. You can copy and paste this. I also have a text document that I made with it, because there is actually some code in here that if you don't change this, it's going to mess it up. So all you have to do is copy and paste that, and then on your source text, just paste it, or Alt-click on that, paste it into the expression field, and now everything should work as you want it to. So let's test this out real quick. So we'll start with our keyframe here on our slider at 0, and we want to go to about right there or so. Let's say like 5,000. Raised a lot of money this time. Ease it. Do the handle thing again. Something like that. Looks nice. All right. And so what's really flexible about this is you can choose to not have the comma or the currency symbol. So if you go to hit EE, you can pull up your expressions, and you just say you want some decimals. You could say I want 2 decimals, and you get 2 decimals, but I don't, so let's say 0. If you don't want a comma, you could say false for that, and it'll take out the comma. And if you don't want the $, just say false for that, and it'll take it out as well. So you can see this is a much more flexible way of doing it, as long as you have the right code. So be sure to copy and paste that and use it as you will. So, all right, so I think we have our counter going on here. I think let's set up our track mat so we can have it kind of slide down below that line. So for the track mat, I'm gonna just draw another rectangle that just kind of sits on that top of that line. I just need to cover over the entire top part here. Make sure I have a fill. Let's take off the stroke. And I'll call this mat. And so I want this to be basically an inverted mat. So I want to say alpha inverted mat. So now if I pull this up, you can see it's disappearing, which is exactly what I want. So I'll set a keyframe here for position. Bring it up over here. Just ease that in quite a bit. Yeah, it looks nice. All right, and then I think I will add an opacity keyframe just so it's a little, let's try that. Yeah, that looks nice. Okay. So that's basically it for our counter. Now the last thing we need to do is just add in that text that kind of tells you what is going on here. All right, so we're gonna do the exact same thing. Make a new text layer. Let's say we reached our giving goal, exclamation. And I just go ahead and center that, okay. And if you ever want to align it, just go to align and you can align it to the center of your composition. It's like that. Okay, so for this we're gonna be using some text animators. So what I want to do is twirl this down and go to animate and then say position. So this position right here is where it is right now. So I want to set a keyframe there and maybe pull it forward, say like to 4 seconds and 12 frames. And then for this vertical position, I just want to pull it down below that line like so, like we did before. And we're going to be reusing this matte. So I'll just duplicate it, bring it up here. And instead of an inverted matte, I want to use an alpha matte. So now when it comes up below that, it reveals it. And of course I want to ease this, and we'll really ease that ending part in. Looks pretty good, but we can actually push the text animator just a little bit forward to have the text be a little more dynamic. So if you go into range selector and then to advanced, I'm going to choose, let's go by words, and then for mode, or actually for shape, let's say ramp up. And you can see now it's not all going at the same rate, so it's kind of sliding into place, which is nice. And I'm gonna have to pull this all a lot further down, so maybe I don't want to, maybe I need to not ease the high so much. Yeah, that looks a little better. Maybe I'll ease the low the other way. Yeah, so it's just a little bit of added visual interest, but I think it works pretty well, maybe a little slower. Cool, I can also add an opacity property if I wanted to. So let's see what that looks like. I need to bring it down to 0, don't I? Actually, I want to go from 0 to 100. Probably easy ease that. See what that looks like. Yeah, that's nice. I don't have to have them be exactly the same either, so. And maybe we'll also add a little blur. So let's go to property, blur, end at 0, maybe start at like 30. Easy ease that. Yeah, let's take it even further. Let's add a little bit of rotation. There we go. So yeah, we have our text coming in, we have our bar working, we have our double helix thing. It's all coming together really nicely. I might start that entire text animation a little bit sooner. Yeah, it's looking really good. And you know, there's so much more you could do with this if you wanted to, but I think we'll probably just call it good right there. The last thing I might do is just duplicate this background, put it up over here, and let's see, let's maybe pull the position keyframe right there, pull it all the way down here. I'm just going to use this as a transition, so if I wanted to I could loop this. Let's easy ease those, pull in the handles. I think After Effects is about to crash on me. Oh no, my mouse. Okay, all is well. Let's see what that looks like. Here we go. Yeah, I might even animate the scale of the gradient. So let's put it at 100 there. Start at 150 just to give it a little bit of movement. Easy ease that. See what that looks like. Nice. Duplicate it one more time. Offset it just a little bit, just so I have a couple going. Looks nice. I think we're good to go. So Hopefully that gives you an idea of how you can create just a dynamic update meter, progress meter, whatever you want to call it, really quickly and easily without a whole lot of effort. There's all kinds of different ways you could iterate this and change it up. And so get out there and experiment, create some cool progress meters, and I'll talk to you later.